We now honor a man whose love of racing goes all the way back to the 1930s, when midget racing flourished as the most popular form of auto racing in this country, from as a child watching his Uncle Bill race a former bootlegger car, to after the war being around another uncle, the great Junior Hauer, as he rose to the top of supermodified racing in this area. But what really hooked Ray was his first visit to Olympic Stadium in 1940. A very young Ray Boyles was captivated by the smell of hot oil and burning rubber and the sounds of the Offies, Altos, and the V8 60s, driven by the big stars of the day like Vito Calea, Boo Boo Badami, and George Benny. During the 50s and 60s, Kansas City area race fans were treated with performances from great drivers, most of whom are already enshrined in this Hall of Fame. And one of those is Junior Hauer, who captivated and captured an unprecedented number of wins and track championships for that time. And Ray Boyles was there to see it all and be a part of it all. When Junior was involved in a terrible accident that forced him to retire from racing in 1967, Ray stepped away from the sport for about 14 years, but the best was yet to come. Ray credits his wonderful bride, Sandy, for his return to Kansas City racing that had changed dramatically over the years he was away. Olympic Stadium was gone, and not so many years later, Olympic, Riverside, and the old Lakeside Speedway on Leavenworth Road would also disappear. Attention turned to son, Joe, racing in the micro and mini sprints to great success before returning where it all began, the midgets. Now his grandson, Clinton, who is keeping the family's winning racing traditions going strong and well into the future. The Boyles name will be here for a long time to come. Arguably, the biggest impact Ray has had is the revival of midget racing as well as non-wing sprint car racing in Kansas City. His tireless work in promoting open wheel racing has been instrumental in keeping the great traditions alive in this area. The All-Star Midget Series was his idea, and also the 360 and 305 engines can compete with the 410s in non-wing sprint car racing, another idea of his. And as we can tell, over the last many years, non-wing sprint car racing has thrived very well due to those ideas. Valley Speedway, one of the places, short tracks where the midgets and the non-wing sprint cars are flourishing to this day. There's much more to talk about, so why not we just talk to him right now. Ladies and gentlemen, he's Kansas City's Mr. Open Wheel Racing. Tonight, he's a Hall of Famer, Ray Boyles. Congratulations.
Thank
you. You go all the way back a long way in your memories, and you started out as a very young child back in the 30s. Talk about your uncle that you watched race a former bootlegger car that his dad had.
That's correct. Grandpa was at Savannah, Missouri, and had a little vineyard out in the back of the farm. Had some very nice homemade wine there that he took down to St. Joseph, about 13 miles, and sold that wine at the parties. Well, Grandpa had a Riley head on a Rutzel two-speed rear axle in that car, and was able to outrun the gendarmes of the police for a while. But they finally got Grandpa, and they put him in the Hall of Fame known as Jeff City Prison for a year. And so as that happened, William Hauer, Junior Hauer's older brother, my older uncle, took the fenders off the car and ran this car at the county fairs all around Tracy, Bethany, Savannah, and all around the areas, and made more money than Grandpa did bootlegging. So that's what ignited our racing world, and so that ended pretty much before World War II. And then when Junior Hauer, my uncle, came home in '45, we built another Model T. I say we, I was a little guy that got to clean all the parts and everything else. So, but anyway, it was a very gracious thing for Junior to let me work with him and learn all about racing. So that's kind of what it's all about. So, and then there's a lady, when Junior got hurt, as your introduction said, I got away from it. And then this lady, known as Sandy, my darling wife, decided she wanted to go to races, and then she wanted a race car, and that's where it went from there. So now, after all these years, we're still playing and still going, and I still love her to death. So anyways, that's...
And you've loved racing so much that you even made plans to build a racetrack at one time. Didn't quite come through, but I mean, you put a lot of sweat into this, haven't you?
Yes, we did. Sandy and I, we decided that we needed to bring the new Olympic Stadium back to Kansas City for the midgets and so on. And in '92, we had permission to build an oval track on the east side of the drag strip off of Nolan Road. So we went to work and had some drawings and plans and all that made up, and actually we're testing cars, and it came out in the Kansas City Star. It says dirt will fly again at the new Olympic Stadium. Well, that being said, the city officials called me downtown and said, we know you're going to be a huge success with the new Olympic Stadium, and that we know that they put 5,000 to 6,000 people in the stands every Sunday night. Well, that being said, we need a third turn lane on Nolan Road to handle the crowd. And I says, Greg, that's fantastic. When do you anticipate doing that? He said, we're not doing it, you are. So that was $175,000 I couldn't come up with, and so we had about $10,000 for the elevation plans, and so Mark Evinger decided he was going to build a track at Grain Valley, so I gave Mark the drawings and all the plans, and that's what Valley Speedway is.
And it is a wonderful racetrack in terms of the configuration, almost perfect for midgets and open wheel cars, isn't it?
Yes, sir. There's some tracks, the straightaways are too long and the turns are too short, but this here, we kind of planned that out, and where you could accelerate down the straightaways and get through the turns. So.
Now, about 10, 15 years ago, we didn't see much midget racing around here. We didn't see much non-wing sprint car racing. Now, these cars are everywhere around here. You played a big role in that. You promoted getting midget racing back in Kansas City with the All-Star Series, and also you had some really good ideas about how to bring non-wing sprint car racing back. It has happened.
Well, what happened there, I was doing a promotional thing for Dennis Trout there at Valley at the front gate, and the people that came in said that we love sprint cars, but we don't like them with the wings. So I went to Dennis and talked to him, and I said, well, you know, the people coming in, they want chicken, you give them chicken. If you want steak, you give them steak. So he says, they won't race without wings. And I said, well, some will and some won't. So he said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, you put the 360s, the 302s, and the 410s all together, and we'll have a great race on this track. So he finally agreed to that, and that's what started that series. And so it went along for a while, and then I think the way I understand it, became the War Series after that. So it was a growing situation and still working very well.
You got to be so proud of your son Joe and your grandson Clinton that what they have done in racing. And I know you were with Joe when he was racing the micros and the mini sprints and moved into the midgets and Chili Bowl. Just to kind of talk about how enjoyable that's been for you.
Well, it's just been a great thing. Joe's just done a wonderful job and made us all feel real proud for our family and going clear back into the early days, and a well-known gentleman in the racing world. And grandson Clinton's come along the same way now and has received a lot of very fine honors in the last year, and so it's just been great. But Joe done a wonderful job and very successful at the Chili Bowl with 3 A mains, and so that worked out really pretty well for us.
But you wouldn't be standing up here tonight, I know you would feel this way, without your great bride, Sandy.
This is true. It was, like I say, it was her idea. She was the one that wanted the cars, and so I'm a type of person that says, yes, dear, whatever.
But she's always been way into it. She's the one that brought you back.
Absolutely. So, again, you know, I wouldn't be here and being able to enjoy a wonderful organization and a bunch of beautiful people in the Hall of Fame, and I'm proud to be there with them.
The C.A.R.B Hall of Fame, I know you've been around this scene for a long time. This thing has gotten to be a big deal, hasn't it?
Yes, it has, and you know, we still strive to promote it and keep it going, and the museum is something that's coming along really well, and I think it's going to be a great thing. So. And
you're not retired. You're still out there promoting midgets, aren't you?
Yes, sir, absolutely. So we're going to run them again at Valley this year, and we've got about 15 shows out there. It's going to be every other Saturday night, and so we're anxious to get started.
Who's with you tonight?
Oh, my whole family, and we got the lady in charge, Miss Sandy, right here.
Sandy, stand up. If you can. Terrific.
And we got my sister who flew in from Texas to be with us, my granddaughter, my daughter Pam, my daughter-in-law, my son Joe, and of course Ron and his lady that work with us at the Corvette shop. Then my director back here in the racing is stand up if you will. This is the guy here that keeps everything going, Greg, if you will.
How about that?
And the gentleman I need to share with you too, this thing at Nolan Road wasn't all me, but Don Hartwig over here, he's one that was very heavily involved with me in getting that going and helping support it. And he's right here. And so then we got Mr. Ray Cunningham sitting here, who's been doing all of our books and all of our printing and on like that. That's brought the history of midgets back to Boo Boo and on like that, for all you folks to know what happened in the early days. So,
final thoughts about what it means for you to be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, it's a very great thing, and I don't know quite how I got here, but I'm sure pleased to be with this group. It's fantastic.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Ray Boyles, ladies and gentlemen. Step right down here. Tom will present the award. How about a nice round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, again, Ray Boyles.